Are you ready to help your players double down on those language goals? Welcome back to Translation Timeout. Today we're going to talk about working with English teachers. In the description, I've included a handout that's basically a wish list of all the things you'd want an English teacher to help your staff with. If you have questions at any time, please leave a comment below or email me at translationtimeout@gmail.com. Now, I can't make a video about English teachers in sports without highlighting that language education is already a major part of professional baseball. Many teams have not only embraced English language curriculum for their international players, they've also added Spanish classes for English-speaking players to close communication gaps on both sides, and some Japanese players have taken part in Japanese Language Education Week to promote learning the Japanese language. I've linked to several articles in the description below about these initiatives, so definitely check them out. And I also want to make sure that we're clear about all the different things that an English teacher can do for your team. They help players create language goals and then monitor their progress in meeting those goals. They create individualized assignments that target the goals. They can also create resources that you can use with future students, regardless of the language background or proficiency level. Because, as I've mentioned in previous lessons, teachers don't necessarily need to speak their players' native language in order to be an effective educator. Another thing that's maybe not discussed as much is that having a designated teacher on your staff means that you can do professional development with the rest of your staff members. Think of them as a cultural consultant that you can ask whenever situations come up, or maybe you have a new employee who's not as comfortable working with English language learners. There's also a lot of variety in how English classes can be conducted, which is great because that means you can individualize it to whatever works for your team. For example, I've taught in gyms, which is great because you can actually work with equipment, but I've also taught online, and that's great when a player is traveling or you're working with someone in a different time zone. And then I've taught one-on-one lessons that are tailored to an individual player's needs. And I've also taught group lessons where players are able to practice with each other. Both of those are great too. I would say that if you have a lot of English learners on your team and you're considering group lessons, I would recommend grouping players by language proficiency level and not the language spoken if you can. That's a little easier for teachers to design engaging and effective lessons for everyone in the class, but of course you don't have a choice over what your players' proficiency levels are, and teachers are able to diversify within classes that have multiple levels represented. Another choice is whether the class is going to be monolingual, where the teacher is primarily teaching in English. You could have more players of different language backgrounds in one class, and players will be challenged to not use their native language as a crutch in communication. Or a bilingual classroom where the teacher is instructing in both English and a player's native language, which does limit which players you could have in a class together, but could be helpful in explaining some difficult grammar concepts. Both are great and have their place. One benefit of a monolingual classroom is that you can build a relationship with a teacher over several seasons, regardless of the languages that your new players will speak. A final choice you'll have to make is whether the teacher is going to be affiliated with your team, either as a staff member or a contractor or consultant, or if the players are going to be responsible for arranging their own private lessons. I've been in both situations, and while I do see the appeal of having the players just handle it themselves, I do want to point out, though, that having a teacher affiliated with your team means that you can reach out to them for many more things, like the professional development that I mentioned earlier, or if there's specific things you want them to go over in lessons. That's going to be difficult, or maybe not even possible to arrange with a player's private tutor, depending on their terms or the site that they're working through. Those are some of the considerations when you're hiring an English teacher. Now I just want to go through some of the things you might see in a sports English class. There are three big areas of focus that I like to cover in my sports English courses. First, there's sports-specific content. This would include things like communicating with teammates, injuries, sports terminology, coach feedback. And then there's PR and behind-the-scenes content like preparing for interviews and interacting with fans. And then there's adjusting to the team's city. So this would be local culture, grocery shopping, independent living, maybe reading practice. So I'll help my students set goals related to those areas and then teach and assess within a sports context. So an example of a goal I might work on with a player is describing an injury to a doctor. Because what's scarier than being in a medical emergency and not being able to communicate with anyone? Now let's think about some of the things a player would need to know and be able to do to have a conversation with the doctor. They're definitely going to need to know body parts. So we'll first work on that vocabulary, either with a translated list or maybe some images, and then we practice that vocabulary with a game like Simon Says. They'll also need to know how to give and receive instructions and recommendations. So then we'll work through constructions like you should do this or you need to do this. And we could start with very simple situations like you need to brush your teeth or you should help your sister. And when they become comfortable with this, I'll introduce some doctor terminology like you should rest or you need to take medicine. And after some more practice, we'll move into a role play scenario where they're a patient I'm the doctor, they describe an injury to me, and I give them recommendations. And then just to make sure they get even more practice with the language, we'll switch sides. Now I'm the patient, they're the doctor, they're giving me recommendations. And of course, I hope that no one ever gets an injury, but the day may come where it happens, and this type of practice will be very useful when they have to communicate in real time with a professional. Now, in my videos, I show a lot of resources that I've created or adapted myself, but there are also a lot of pre-made resources out there that work really well for English learners. Sports Illustrated for Kids, for example, is written at an appropriate reading level for a lot of English learners. Just make sure that you're choosing content that's not too childish. And one way to get around that and to build literacy skills is with high interest, low level books. They have more mature themes but are written at an elementary school reading level. A lot of my students love these books. And finally, there are materials made specifically for sports English lessons, like these workbooks for baseball and soccer. They're books written to teach English, but everything is within a sports context. So if you're ready to work with an English teacher, there are a lot of different ways that you can individualize your instruction, whether it's a monolingual classroom or bilingual classroom, group instruction or one-on-one lessons, and even in-person versus virtual. Whatever you need, English teachers can be very flexible, and everything they do will be tailored towards helping your players integrate into your team. Use today's handout to brainstorm how an English teacher could be effective on your team. Maybe you could even turn this into a job description when you go to hire someone. As always, reach out if you have any questions and stay tuned for my next video, which will be about navigating and understanding cultural differences. Thanks for watching and see you again soon.